Hey, Bread and Wine and friends of Bread and Wine. I'm so sorry this video is coming to you late. Had some technical difficulties, but I didn't want you to miss the opportunity to learn the prayer exercise that we're focusing on in this season of Lent, talking about difficult emotions, how to process those before God with honesty so that we can experience real transformation, but more importantly, real union with our God. And anger was the topic this week. We talked about how to come before God with our anger, not in the moment of our anger, but in reflection later, coming to God and taking those experiences of rage and bringing them before Him to understand them better and to begin to sort of offer even that part of ourselves to God. So I want to read a psalm for you, and I'll just give you a couple of quick insights and steps in order to kind of discover what it means to bring even these ugly parts of ourselves before God. Psalm 137 says this: "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and there we wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows there we hung out our harps, and for there our captors asked us for songs, and our tormentors asked for happiness, saying, 'Sing us one of the songs of Zion.' How could we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither, let my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I don't remember you. If I don't set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall, how they said, 'Tear it down, down to its foundations.' O daughter of Babylon, you devastator, happy shall they be who pay you back for what you've done to us. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against the rock." That is a raw expression of rage. So what can we do? Well, why is this in the Bible? And what can we do when we experience that kind of anger? Knowing what Jesus says about anger being a way of actually committing murder in our heart when we seek to extinguish other people by virtue of our own fury. Well, this is in Scripture because the only place to process our anger in a way that it won't harm others or ourselves is to process it before God. He's the one who can take it, and as we come to Him with sort of autopsying our moments of anger, we begin to learn things about it and deal with it in a way that both delivers our enemies from our anger and delivers us from the constant feeling of almost self-annihilation that comes in anger, where we're so consumed by it that all the rest of ourselves are eclipsed behind it. And we find ourselves being the person we don't recognize. In our worst moments of anger, it's like, what was that? Who was that? That wasn't me. So I want to give you 3 steps that this psalm kind of outlines for handling our anger before God. And we talked more about this on Sunday, but I'm not going to have time to get into all the details. But I will tell you that in verses 1 through 3, you can see the author slowing down his anger. And 1 through 3 in this psalm is really about memory, anger, and our memory of being wronged. So there is in our anger an injustice that we feel was done to us. Behind all anger is the sense that we were done dirty by something or some circumstance. And that injustice is what provokes the rage. And maybe that's legitimate and it's a real injustice, and maybe it's not a real injustice. But it doesn't matter when it comes to your emotions. It's the same. It's the feeling. It's the feeling of injustice as it hits you. And the way to process our anger with God is to first slow down, and in our prayer, think about what was the injustice that was done to me. You see, anger often hides grief. And when we, not in the moment of our anger, but in reflecting upon it in prayer, go to God and say, what triggered me? What set me off? What made me so furious? We can begin to think about what was the thing that, the injustice that was done to me, and why did it hurt so much? Why did I respond so strongly? And as we think about it and rehearse that loss, we start thinking not about the aggressor, but about our own grief, what we've lost, what was done to us. And slowing down our anger by first remembering not so much the person or the circumstance, but the effect that it had on us. What did I lose? What was being threatened by what I was experiencing? That's the first step to praying our anger, to come before God and process, God, what was done to me? Just like he does here. He says he sat down and he wept because he remembered. And that's what we do with the first step with our anger. We remember what was done to us and we weep over it. We think about it. We grieve over it. And then the second aspect in this psalm of dealing with our anger is with our identity. So the first one is anger and memory. The second one is about anger and our identity. The memory of victimization, of feeling like something was done wrong to us, can become an identity if we let that negative experience define our ourselves, our personhood. So what happens is that we begin to nurture that anger, roll it over in our mouths, savoring it, thinking about it. And when we do that, and we focus on the aggressor or the person doing the injustice and really savor what they've done to us, that becomes almost powerful enough to become what we are and who we are. It becomes inseparable from who we are. So in this second step, instead, just like in the first step, we're going with God to thinking about what the loss, not the aggressor, but the loss. And then the second step, we're thinking not so much about the aggressor and what they've done to us, but we're thinking about what it is we truly value, what it is that we are all about that was threatened when we got angry. You see what I mean? So in this psalm, he says what's being threatened is his love for Jerusalem. His anger is about Jerusalem being destroyed, and the first 3 verses are him remembering, what is this terrible loss that I've suffered, and dealing with the grief. The second part of his prayer is saying, I'm going to remember all of the good things, the glorious things about this city that I love. And what he's doing is actually saying, the injustice that was done to me, the wrong that was done to me will not define me. It won't take away from me the thing that I love, the thing that I value, which was threatened with whatever injustice I suffered. So it's a way of doubling down on the thing that got tweaked. So let's say you were at work, you felt like your boss disregarded some really hard work you were doing. And so in prayer you say, God, I worked so hard on this, and you first deal with the grief of the loss. I thought I was doing so well. I put so much of myself into this, and it wasn't recognized. And so you're dealing with the grief of it, allowing yourself to grieve. And then the second part of it with your identities, you say, I really value the work ethic that I have, that I I do put myself into my work. I work really hard. You begin to extol, lift up the thing that was threatened or disregarded by the injustice, and you double down on it. So that's the second part of it. You guard your identity by remembering all of the good things that about the thing that was threatened, the injustice that threatened you. And then the last part of it has to do with power. And this is the most uncomfortable part of the psalm, because it talks about destroying infants, exploding babies. It's horrific. It's what was done to them when their city was laid to siege. And he says, he's doing his level best to say, I want justice to be done. What was done to me, I want it to be done to them. Now, that seems a little barbaric, but he's before God, in his honesty, from his gut, he's saying, this is what would be necessary to make what happened right. The amazing thing about that is that he doesn't do these things. He doesn't go and pick up their children and bash them against the rock. Instead, he says, God, here's what I think would be right. Here's what I think justice would mean. From the furnace of my belly, from the anger that I'm experiencing, here's what I think would be right. But he hands that over to God and says, you do what is just. And so prayer interrupts the process of vengeance by saying justice belongs to God. God, let justice be done. But by entrusting God with the act of justice, you are also cooperating with God to say, I too want justice to be done. And you're doing your best, even if it's not that great, even if you're not sure if this is the right thing or not. Even if it comes from maybe a place that you can't tell if it's my anger or if it's really justice, but you offer to God what you think the right thing to do would be, and you let God take care of it. You let God do it. So that's how we handle the power dynamic of our anger. We don't take it into our own hands, we pray it. We ask God to do it. So anger and memory, anger and identity, and anger and power. That's what this psalm addresses. If we will remember what the injustice that harmed us and focus on our grief on the harm, if we will guard our identity by lifting up the good things that were threatened by that injustice, and if we entrust vengeance to God and pray, God, do what's right, even if it's scary, and then take our hands off of it and let God be the one to do justice, you will find over time, not like magic, it's work. If you will pray your anger in this way, after you come out of the heat of it and reflect back on it, you will find yourself becoming less and less reactive and more able to handle the griefs and injustices that come your way without retaliating. I hope that's helpful, and I hope to see you again in the next video. So thanks, Bread and Wine, friends of Bread and Wine. Appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the next one.